Welcome to the Catholic Cafe, where Catholic truth is served fresh daily. We've made you a reservation in the luxurious corner booth, so come on in and see what's on the menu today. Now, here's your host, Deacon Jeff Drzymski.
Greetings and welcome to the Catholic Cafe. I'm Deacon Jeff, sitting in the luxurious corner booth of the Catholic Cafe. I've got Venerable Tom Dorian.
Hey.
Venerable, just waiting on a couple of miracles.
I'm waiting.
We're all waiting. Say.
Don't hold your breath.
I think you're going to die, too. I'm not sure how that saint-making process works.
Yeah, there's some kind of process in there.
Yeah, exactly. But we're so happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I haven't talked to you in a little bit of time. It's been a minute.
Good to see you.
But I'm good to see you as well.
You look healthy.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Excellent.
Yeah, lots of reasons to feel healthy in this day and age. And we have a guest in place of our Sam Rodriguez.
Yeah, Ziggy.
Yeah, Ziggy is not here. Did he go to a cheese festival? I can't remember. Or was it?
That sounds like him.
It was a jiu-jitsu cheese festival,
That's
which is
awesome,
kind of a rare thing that we wish him well anyway. But we do
There's
have
a joke in there. I'm not going to use it.
No, we'll stay away from it. But we do have a great guest today, Sergio Vasquez. Sergio, hey, welcome to the Catholic Cafe. He's a luxurious corner booth.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. And Sergio is, I guess, creator, host, owner, I don't know what you are, but for a radio ministry that caters to Hispanics called Radio Resurrecion. And so it's been in the Diocese of Memphis. You've been active in our diocese for a little bit of time. How long have you guys been doing that?
So in June of this year, it was 3 years. So
3 years. So it's still kind of a baby thing, kind of,
sure, very much.
And it's still kind of growing. By the way, where does somebody find this ministry if they're interested?
Sure. If they're interested, a couple easy ways to do it is you can go on Facebook, Radio Resurrecion, and also on YouTube is probably the easiest way to do it.
And for all of our Anglo listeners, of which there are many,
yes.
Just remember Resurrection is like, it doesn't have a T in it.
Correct.
Right, just the C-I-N's and C-I-O-N. So that's the way you can find it if you're searching for it. But the reason we wanted to have you on, Sergio, is because one of the things that's like, I think that we don't talk a lot about, but we should be talking about is ministering to all the various cultures, and I've told people before that I'm 61. Tom, you're 78. 78, is it?
It feels like 78.
Feels like 78.
I'm sure it looks the same.
We're a couple of older guys. We're obviously both Anglos, right? And so I know that growing up, you and I, how we perceived other cultures, like that were in America.
It's foreign. No pun intended.
Well, I know exactly, but we knew of people, right?
Absolutely.
And you don't ever want to lump people into groups, and you don't want to put people in boxes. And there are so many different dynamic and beautiful and diverse cultures that are out there, and it's so beautiful to see all that stuff. But a lot of times, like especially like in a diocese and in church ministry, there's like the regular ministry, and then there's like what they will call multicultural ministry, which usually is just Hispanic ministry in a lot of places. And so we thought we'd bring Sergio on to like find out how things have changed and what kind of going on in that particular culture in the Diocese of Memphis, or your experience. But you've been ministering in this way for like 3 years, but obviously you've been in this culture for a lot longer,
sure.
Like Vasquez. So you're obviously you're native to where in Mexico?
So my parents are from the southern part of Mexico. My mom is from Puebla. My dad is from Morelos. But I was born out in California.
Oh, in California. Mm-hmm. All right. And so you've got it's like if I'm talking to you on the phone, I'm like, I have no idea who I'm talking to. I don't, because a lot of times we can hear very distinctly, sure. Like cultures in our voices, right? So you're part of this community in Memphis, but you like have taken to this specifically radio ministry in your way. Why is that something that interested you, and how did you get into like Radio Resurrecion?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had a project about 4 years ago, pre-COVID. I had already been planning it. The idea behind it was to have video series highlighting different people around our diocese, whether they were seminarians, priests, lay people, highlighting their stories, their conversion, and what God is doing with them today.
Right.
And so this was supposed to be all video initially. And when COVID hit, I talked to my brother about it. He had a little bit of equipment, and I said, "Hey, I'm about to purchase."
Who's your brother? We got a name drop.
My brother is Daniel Vasquez.
Okay, Daniel.
Yeah. He's
your inspiration, isn't he? We'll just say it now that way, so
sure.
He feels really important and big.
He pushed me. He did. He brought forth a lot of good ideas.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what happened is I initially started, and then about a month into the project, we were, I want to say, in the middle of COVID. I get a call from a good friend, Angel Lagunes. He's a good singer here in Memphis, and he said, "Hey, you know Victor?" And I said, "Yeah, I know Victor." And Victor Ramirez is the founder of Radio Resurrecion. And so then he said, "Hey, Victor is starting this, this radio thing. I don't know if you're interested. You said you were doing something with videos. Would you like to be a part of it?" And so, sometimes when you get a call like that, you don't know what to think.
Sometimes a part of it means money.
Oh, yeah, right. And you're like, does this mean that I need to, go in pretty hard as far as financial commitment? But no, he said, look, he's really looking to fill in some spots to work with him. And I ran by him the idea that you were doing this. So through conversation, through that, that rekindling of a relationship, Victor said, "Hey, I want to do this. I need some help. I need someone that is, I would say, as passionate as I am about doing this." And so that's how I got involved I would say around April, May of 2020. Victor and I started talking about some ideas, and we initially started with about 6 to 7 people. And as with any project, you start with some, and then some come, some go. And here we are 3 years later, to some degree, very different what we imagined back then, but really the idea of projecting what our people are doing here. And when I mean our people, I just don't mean one set of people. Really, I mean God's people, right?
Amen.
Yeah, it's about Radio Resurrecion. When you ask me what it's about, what's the purpose, and it really is about illuminating and casting a light out on those people that are really trying, right? When we look at the lives of the saints, they all weren't perfect here on earth. They all had battles, and they all had struggles, and a lot of us relate to that. We all have struggles, battles, whether it's a spiritual battle, a physical battle, a mental battle. We all go through them, and we hope that through Radio Resurrecion, we're able to inspire people that may need that message of hope, of inspiration, of uplifting. And whether it's through an interview, through some of the inspirational talks that we have from time to time, I would say that if we do that, then we're fulfilling the mission of Radio Resurrecion.
That's awesome. And I noticed, on your Facebook page, you've got, you got close to 7,000 followers. So there's been success, obviously, in reaching that particular community, and whoever wants to listen, again, you can find them on Facebook. And pardon me if I don't trill my R's as well as you do. I struggle. So
No
we'll just go with Radio Resurrecion.
That works.
We'll at least get the Sion at the end, as best I can.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, but so you mentioned the word passion early on. I think maybe Victor was asking you if you shared that same passion or whatever. Tell me about that passion. What is it that is driving you about your faith? I mean, why do you care so much? Obviously, this is not to make a buck, because trust me, from one radio guy to another, there's not a lot of bucks here.
No.
Right? This is not necessarily like this, we're not driving the big fancy cars.
Sure.
So it's not really a financial thing. What is it that it's making you, what is your passion, I guess, in terms of this ministry?
Sure. I always think about what Pope Francis said a few years ago, where he said, "Vayan y hagan lío," right? Go out and make a mess to some degree,
Yeah.
right? And when you wake up every day and you think about what drives you, for me specifically, it's about being able to have a conversation with somebody, 5-10 years down the road, and said, "Hey, you know what? I heard this show one time and it helped me. It helped me change. It helped me become a better husband, a better son, a better brother, a better server." So I think the passion lies knowing that although you may not see it, right, because you're transmitting through a medium, right, and you don't see who else is out there,
right,
but the fact that you can one day talk to those people and they say, "Hey, through something that you said or your guest said, it really did help me have a change of life or see things differently," that for me is a driving point, because in an era where we are filled with so much information and so much content, we know our competitors really is not within our space, it's within those spaces, right? Because they're misinforming, they're misguiding, they're confusing our people, and they can confuse us as well, right? So being able to push out content that really leads people towards the truth, I would say, is the ultimate driving force.
There is nothing more rewarding, and I shouldn't say rewarding so much as just say affirming. Like the word, I think God gives you little glimpses every once in a while, and I hope and pray that you'll get more and more of these as you continue in this ministry. But like the times that we've at the Catholic Cafe have gotten like an email from somebody saying, "Hey, something you said or something that you guys talked about 3 years ago kind of got me out of this place in my life I needed to get out of," or whatever. Just wanted to tell you, I'm all better now, and I just thank you. And I just, those are really affirming, and it helps you to know that somehow God's using you, and He's given you all these gifts and talents, and He's using you. So that's an awesome experience. I know that you're having there. So speaking of the gifts and talents God's given you, I mean, have you always been interested in like media and television, radio, video, film? Where did that come from?
That's a great question. I think growing up, I started doing a little bit of theater when I was about 7 years old.
Where in California, by the way, were you?
So we were in Southern California, Santa Ana. Yeah, I grew up in Santa Ana for about 5 years, and then in '95 we moved to Memphis.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when I moved here, funny enough, is I didn't know a lick of English. Everything down in California, at least where we were at, was all Spanish.
Right.
So there was no need to learn it. And so a couple years in, I was fluent enough. And I always go back and think about how God uses you in different ways. I remember by second grade, I was helping, kids learn how to read. And this is coming from someone that is not a native speaker. It's not someone that, grew up learning the language. You picked it up on later on. I think it's powerful, right? And a lot of that is attributed to parents, right? My mother was a pusher, and she never let me give up. But back to your question, doing a little bit of theater, and then going into music, and then just really watching. I'm big on seeing what's coming, what's happening, what works, what doesn't. And I think down the road, I realized that I could probably make some kind of impact through theater or through music, but you start self-evaluating and saying, okay, if I couldn't do those two things anymore, what else could I do?
Yeah.
So I'm a believer of always adding value to who you are through the skills that you can acquire. And so I'd been tinkering on, doing interviews for a while, and I'd done a little bit of, I wouldn't even call myself a DJ, to say the least, but people had said, hey, you're really good at performing, and so there's a degree of performance that I guess that is instilled in my DNA.
Well, knowing your voice and
Sure.
using your voice, and also having that sense for when you need to turn the page, like when do we change, how do
Sure.
we transition, how do we get from this point to that point. Those are some natural talents that I've recognized that in you, but also that you've recognized in yourself, and that's one of the things that draws you to this, I'm sure, because it's a natural fit.
Oh yeah, and I think there's a level of humility there, right? I think when we talk about being humble,
Well, there needs to be.
Yeah, there
right.
needs,
Not
yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
I struggle with that. Right.
Yeah.
When you start to go like, hey, you've got X million listeners or whatever, it's really easy to get drawn into.
Sure.
But then you get humbled all the time. The time I get humbled, and people are like, now who are you?
Yeah.
Who's this famous person you're standing next to?
Right.
Oh, I thought I was. Maybe I'm not. Okay, good. Thank you, Lord.
Oh, no. And there's always different ways that God will present to you in your life that keeps you grounded. And I think that's probably the most important thing that I could say in regards to my experience in doing all this is I've got parents that have always instilled, hey, be grounded. You're not better than anyone, right? You're who you are. It's not worth comparing yourself to others because there's always someone better than you. There's always someone more talented and more gifted and better looking. If you live life comparing yourself to others, you'll really never be happy.
Right.
Yep. So.
Yeah, they say in The Law in the Jungle, like really, you don't need to be the lead. That's a lot of work. You just need to be like, You just need to be faster than the slowest water buffalo.
Correct.
Right? So you just need to be better than one person, really. Sure. That's the one that's going to get eaten by the predator, right? You'll just kind of be in that crowd. But obviously I'm joking about that. But the thing is, there is something I think that's really good about your own recognition of how God is like working in your life. Because there's so many folks that kind of go through life not really knowing that they have a certain skill set or charism or gifting or something that, and they don't realize that like God has basically made them that way or encouraged them in that way so that they can then be, useful in the vineyard. And you've been able to see that. So that's a positive thing.
Sure. And I think we're called to identify those gifts and be open to the criticism or the feedback from others to identify those gifts. I can say the biggest attribute to that is my father, for instance. He was always big on pointing out the things that we did well. We talked about weaknesses and things that we could improve, but he always pushed us to see, hey, you're a son of God. You're a daughter of God. You're beautiful in who you are, and you've been given gifts. Your job is to try to identify those, and then once you've identified those, you perfect them as much as you can. But then you go out and use them to some degree, right? If you're able to write, if you're able to create music, if you're able to produce, we're called obviously to use those to benefit our families and to provide a living for ourselves. But also, more importantly, is to serve others, right? If I'm only using my gifts to benefit myself without benefiting others, then I have really misunderstood what the gospel's about. And we were called to come here and to give back and to serve, and that to me is the biggest satisfaction, knowing that if I can be that servant, right, to someone else, then I'm fulfilling my mission as a son of God.
Well, obviously I've never met your parents, but I can tell you they're great people already. So you've been blessed in that way. And I actually hope that maybe one day you're going to run for some kind of political office, because you seem to have a great perspective about things, and obviously you're talking about some things that are very cultural in terms of like, you were blessed with these parents that were obviously children of God themselves, right? Raised you in that way, raised you, your family in that way. And so that's been a blessing to you, and you've been able to see that and experience that, and it's actually made you a way better citizen of society, as we'll say. Now, I will say that you're like anybody else, you're probably recognizing that culturally things are just kind of seem like in a downward spiral, and all the things that you just talked about, how like your dad would deal with you and talk to you, certainly talk about weaknesses and helping you grow, but also to help you know just all these gifts that you have, right, and encourage and affirm those gifts. And how wonderful that is, and then have the blessing of a mom and a dad, all right, in a loving family setting. You look at like the devil in the world right now, and just attacking families and tearing families apart. And again, to make this question even more complex, as an Anglo, I look at that and I look and I go like, I get what's happening to all my Anglo brothers and sisters out there. I don't even know what's happening in the Hispanic community, and the Hispanic community is now so varied, right? There's so many different folks from so many different cultures. Like, do you recognize that? Is that a big thing in the Hispanic community? Are the same struggles going on there with families and with God and with parents and all that stuff? Oh,
most definitely. And then you throw in the communication barrier in there, right? You've got mom and dad who left home, wherever home may be, Mexico, Venezuela, Guatemala, El Salvador, looking for a better life. So they get here and they know that they've got to push and drive and bring forth a family in the midst of all the struggles. And then you have their children who, to some degree, I don't want to say they're spoiled, right? I think there's plenty of them that have seen enough struggle to not point them in that bucket, but a lot of them don't know what it is to struggle. And I think that's the driving force between some of the division there, right? You've got mom and dad with one story, and then you have, son and daughter who kind of have an easy life, who now have access to all this information that mom and dad didn't have. So now they question mom and dad, hey, well, if you believe God, I just saw this TikTok video, or I saw so-and-so on YouTube. that it has explaining it this way. Priest doesn't say that in church, or my friends at school, they go to this church and they do all these things, right? So now there's this division of worlds, and then we talk about the communication barrier.
And that's within the family.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
For sure.
That's within the family. And you say communication barrier because the parents are going to be obviously fluent in their native language, and it's harder for an adult to learn a new language. Sure. So you learned English when you were like 5, 6, 7, so it's still in your formative years, so it was easier for you. So you had a lot of things that your parents didn't have, right? A lot of opportunities and things that were obviously good for you. I remember one particular priest, Tom. He was our pastor, Monsignor MacArthur, and I remember him saying something in a homily one time, and he goes like, I get why kids don't believe in God. What do they need God for? They have cell phones. They have a job at the Dairy Queen or wherever, right? They've got a car. They've got access to a car. They have air conditioned houses. The lights come on, meals, the laundry service. Their parents. They have everything they need. Why do they need God? And that was an eye opener. And I don't think he even knew he was saying that. He said it, and then everyone kind of gasped and maybe even chuckled a little bit. Like, that's an incredibly brilliant assessment of the world today with our younger folks. They don't know the struggle, right? They've never wanted for anything, which makes it harder for them to want God. And so you're saying that's very prevalent in the Hispanic community as well? Oh,
sure. Well, a lot of the idea is I don't want my kids to suffer, right, as I suffered. They don't want them going through some of the trials, and some of those trials, they're not equal, right? For instance, my parents would tell me, hey, sometimes it was a choice of working. For instance, my dad, my grandfather, he worked the lands, right? So sometimes he would have to help him after school.
Right.
Whereas me after school, what was I to do is either get on the Xbox or watch TV or do homework.
You had like the Cartoon Network, which played cartoons 24/7.
Exactly.
I didn't have that growing up. We had to wait till Saturday morning to see Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, and now in the world of Netflix, right?
It's all on demand.
On demand. So I think there are some of those mindsets that. For instance, my mom and dad were very blunt about, hey, I'm not going to give you everything that I didn't have. Because if I give you everything I didn't have, to your point, then what else do you need?
Again, wise parents.
Right. And mom especially was very tough. Dad was always very graceful and loving, and mom was in her own way.
Now, there's always a good cop, bad cop situation in parenting, and it's normal, it's natural.
No, you need it. And, now as I talk to, some of my, for instance, I've had kids that talk to me from youth group. I used to do youth group years ago. And I just had one reach out yesterday, for instance. He says, hey, I'm going through this. Can we talk? And I know that his parents have at some point said, hey, we're struggling with him. He's going through some of these things. And a lot of it is tied, right, back down to the fundamentals, right? What makes a family, what makes children happy. And it's not the materialistic stuff that makes you happy. It really is the quality time, the attention, the words of affirmation, the support, showing up to the games, showing up to events. When you don't have that growing up, it to some degree leaves this void in your heart, right? And you don't have those moments guarded in your heart. So a lot of things are tied to the, hey, I'm going to give you everything I never had, but then really, what they really need is you as a parent, and I speak a lot from a son perspective because I don't have kids yet, and I think, when I talk to kids and I say, hey, like, well, what are you like as a son as well? Like, are you mindful of what they're doing for you? And I think culturally we're probably getting to the point where kids feel they're smarter than parents because they have access to all this information. They know English, and their parents probably don't know as much English as they do, so they can get away with watching certain things or hearing certain things. So I think when you know that those are that's the battleground, you've got to find a way to obviously keep parents in tune to some of the content, but also part of what we're doing right now is we're looking for more content is how do we reach out to these kids, right, that feel confused, that feel abandoned. I've expressed to some priests that, hey guys, I know we do so much for the parents, but what are we doing for them by the time they become parents, they don't want to come to church because they never were part of the church growing up. And so part of our mission is to find ways to creatively bring those kids back. And how do we do that when they're battling all these other things? It's a question to be had. It's a discussion to be had. But, it's definitely something that we're trying to do more.
Well, I'm just so pleased that you came to talk to us today about this, because I think you're in the right place with this ministry. So just really want to keep encouraging you with Radio Resurrecion, and encourage some of our listeners. This is a vital ministry. I mean, not specifically Radio Resurrecion, but what you guys are doing in this culture that we sometimes, I don't want to say dismiss, but we're just not part of it, right? So we're worried about supporting this and supporting that. If someone wants to reach out and support what your ministry is, what you guys are doing to help you build more listenership, build more content that's vitally needed especially for the young folks that you're ministering to, how do they do that? How do they reach out and help you with support? Sure.
So they can reach us out via email. I will spell that for you: RadioResurreccion @gmail. And I say that with one C because Resurrecion actually has two. But our founder, when he did the whole logo and all the marketing, he only put one C. So that tends to cause a little bit of confusion. So I always emphasize there's only one C.
Only one C.
One C in Resurrecion. Or they can reach me at 901-489-4246. I'm always on 24/7. My wife would say that's probably to a fault, but
that's beautiful.
You're always ready to jump in where needed. So,
well, Sergio Vasquez, thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today. And let's ask our Blessed Mother to bless your ministry and to bless all of us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Catholic Cafe. If you'd like to contact Deacon Jeff, send him an email at deaconjeff@thecatholiccafe.com. Visit us on the web at thecatholiccafe.com. You can also find us on iTunes or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Catholic Cafe is brought to you by the Order of Malta Federal Association. Join us again at the Catholic Cafe, serving up salvation one cup of coffee at a time.